I don't really get starstruck because at the end of the day, they are just another human and I see them as that. It's so wild to then be like, okay, this is just an ordinary human who has a talent. And you just put them on a stage in front of people and it's this weird transformative experience because it is hard to get through it without losing who you are, what you are. It is so hard.
This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hey, this is Drew Dixon from Humans of Gaming and Love Thy Nerd, and I'm the chief content nerd at Love Thy Nerd and other nerd stuff. Nerdy nerd. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm Chris Gwaltney, the other host here with Humans of Gaming, and with this show, we like to find people in the games industry, whether video games or board games, and just get to know them as people and hear what makes them tick and learn all about them, and hopefully you get to learn about them and realize that there are living, breathing people behind the games that we love.
And also that you get to see that there are just some amazing things happening in the world of gaming that you might not know about and that you might not understand. And I really was excited about this discussion because we've been working with this person personally for years now, and really appreciate her friendship and her just the work she does for our organization. And it's funny, you can work with people for a long time and then never really hear their story. If you skip that part early in your relationship, it can feel awkward to go back to it. Oh, hey, tell me about you, where you grew up and your experiences with religion or whatever. Those things are just not going to come up sometimes if you don't get that early on. And so we had Kate Kadowaki on, who is, what is her official title?
Chief Social Media Nerd. She's also one of our co-founders with LTN. It's so, for us to get to know our friends, we just had to start a podcast, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, apparently. Well, it's, cool. It's a bummer too because of COVID. We just haven't been able to hang out with our staff in person. The best we've been able to do is, Zoom or Discord. So, so it was cool getting to hang out with Kate and have an in-depth conversation with her. And she has a pretty crazy story, just a teaser here. She was a Disney pop star for a while.
She's LTN's very own Disney princess.
That's right.
Our Kate Kadowaki.
So we dig into that and how we were able to steal her from Disney for Love Thy Nerd.
Yeah. It was good to just learn new things about her and hear things that we hadn't heard before. And it reminds me that everyone has a story, even people that you think you know really well. They still have stories and they still have motivations and fears and desires and passions and all that stuff. That kind of stuff really creates extra empathy in me for other people. So hopefully it does the same for you in listening to this.
And Kate's super funny and really easy to talk to. Yep. So I think everyone will really enjoy this one. So without further ado, here's our conversation with our very own LTN co-founder and chief social media nerd, Kate Kadowaki.
Enjoy.
Kate Kadowaki, how are you?
I am amazing.
Wow.
Actually, I haven't felt that good in a while, but today's a pretty good day.
Did you just wake up on the right side or what?
Yeah, I did. I think I did. And I had pizza for lunch.
Oh, nice. I went sledding at lunch. That's kind of a new thing.
Really?
I didn't normally get to do, yeah.
Are you good at sledding?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask that question before because I didn't know that there was a range of skills
there is, for sure.
Sledding.
That's why I'm asking is to
be good at sledding, you just have to not care if you get hurt. I think is that's how you be good.
Kate, have you been sledding?
I've been sledding a couple times. I am not good at sledding. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm not good at sledding. My grandparents had this cabin where it snows sometimes there. And so they would take us and we would go like sledding down these very short but extremely steep hills. So it was kind of a rough landing when you get to the bottom.
So are you like bad at sitting on a thing?
Well, I guess so, because I always end up like spinning around with my back facing like front where I need to go. But
Yeah, that's a problem.
I've been seeing some people sledding videos on, Facebook, and none of them have been doing that.
We would quite a bit today. Like, just it's not we have a hill pretty close to our house that we can just walk to, which is great, because anytime it snows in Middle Tennessee, you just don't want to be on the roads because people freak out because it happens so rarely. So not because I would be afraid to drive on snowy or icy roads, but because I don't trust other people. But thankfully, we just walked over to this hill, but we got a ton of like ice, kind of like sleety type stuff. And then snow came later on top of that. So like, but it's a thin layer of snow. And then underneath that's just a bunch of ice. So it was like super slick. And like, you could not control that sled for anything. You just basically jumping on the sled and praying it goes okay.
It works out. I guess I don't have any snow experience like in life. I've lived in California, Southern California, my entire life. We barely know what to do when it rains here. So when I don't know the first thing of what to do with snow.
So, this is called Humans of Gaming. So we want to talk about Kate's influence and involvement in gaming culture. She's one of our fellow LTN founders. Kate, tell us about that.
I am a founder of LTN, co-founder.
Great job.
It's been a good ride. And
wait, are you resigning right now?
No, it's awesome. I really love being a part of LTN in this capacity. I feel honored to work with you guys. Even Matt and Bubba, my free play podcast co-hosts, I will say that, and I sing about them on this podcast. Yeah, it's crazy because it's crazy that I get to be on this podcast right now, because the previous iteration of this podcast is what got me into gaming in this way, really. And
I don't think I knew that.
Really?
I didn't know that either. Okay,
well, it's a good story. Because I was thinking about it last night while I couldn't go to sleep because I was excited to be on this. So I'd been having a really bad like winter, just like super depressed, just really struggling. And I'm like, I need to learn something to make my brain, wake up and be used. So I typed into the Apple podcast search bar, religion and video games. The Game Church podcast came up. I'm like, wow, this is really sweet. I didn't know anyone really like talked about this stuff with games. So I listened to every single episode. I was a Drew Dixon fan.
Just in one sitting?
Not in one sitting. No. Just like spread out.
This is a big deal.
Then I was like,
we've never had a Drew Dixon fan on this podcast.
I'm a true Drew Dixon
I'm
fan.
not even a Drew Dixon fan.
I was like, what is Game Church? Looked it up. Was like, oh, that's a cool shirt. I bought the shirt. Shirt arrived at my house.
Do you remember like what the first podcast that you listened to, the Game Church podcast?
It might have been the one with Ken Levine, because I had just played BioShock Infinite.
That was a popular one.
Nice.
That was a cool one.
Yeah,
it was super cool. So I bought a Game Church shirt and it arrived at my house, and the return address was a location that's 10 minutes from my house.
And that's how we met, Kate.
So you immediately drove to that location.
Yeah, I immediately drove there. Yeah, and in the package with the shirt was a hand-drawn stick figure by Chris Gwaltney.
It's just that personal touch, it just goes a long way.
Yeah.
And look here now, you're a founder of LTN.
Yeah, so then I asked Drew if I could write something for the site and pitched him like one good idea, one bad idea, and wrote for Game Church, and then kind of got involved there and started doing like social media and stuff there and podcasting, which was really cool.
Kate, guess what I just found?
What?
I just searched my email for Kate, because I remember the email. You sent me an email. This was in 2016. 2016.
What does it say?
I mean, it's pretty boilerplate. Hey,
okay.
Chris, my name's Kate Kadowaki. I've been part of Game Church for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half.
Okay.
I've written a couple articles for the site, lurked around in the city, Facebook. I'm a dedicated podcast listener and played a Friday game night every now and then. Blah, blah, blah.
That's all I said?
Well, the subject was, I want to help Game Church. So this was when I think because you talked about like social media stuff, and then we started talking social media stuff, and then you started doing like social media for Game Church.
Yeah. And now here I am with Love Thy Nerd, and the two of you, my hero Drew Dixon, we're here.
Wow.
It's amazing.
What a ride.
It's just such a random thing. The way that it went down is so random and interesting.
Yeah. You came to the office too, didn't you? Like we met.
Yeah,
You
I
came by
did.
the office and we met there.
But it just goes to show, like, you know, I don't know, this little moments that can really shape our lives. Like, I had a similar story of how I kind of got involved with Game Church. Like, somebody told me this, you know, just I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was like, "Hey, have you heard about this this gaming ministry that gave out beer at E3?" And I was like, "That's weird and crazy, and I want to talk to these people." So I like looked up Mikey Bridges, who was the founder of Game Church, and like just emailed him and said, "Hey, I want to interview you for." I was writing for Christ Pop Culture. I was an editor for Christ Pop Culture at the time, and that led to me then working for Game Church. And you know, all obviously, like, Game Church is what brought us all together, and Love Thy Nerd wouldn't exist, I don't think, or for sure wouldn't exist if it weren't for all of us connecting through Game Church, which we don't talk about a ton on this show or even at Love Thy Nerd or whatever, just because I don't know, just doesn't come up a ton, I guess. But I think it's important to like sort of acknowledge and remember those things. And yeah, I'm really, it's just crazy the way that we're all sort of brought together, I think.
Yeah, it is.
And you,
wild.
so for LTN, you're a founder. What do you do for LTN?
I am the chief social media nerd, and I am a co-host and producer of the Free Play podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does she do a good job, Drew?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well,
Kate, I will say this. Kate is like just super steady. I feel like you can always
Thank
count
you.
on. We can always count on you.
Yeah.
You always do good work. Like, also, I
say-
think like, free. You know, you bring a lot of like fun to our team as well. Like, just I think we have a lot of fun because you're on the team, and like Free Play podcast. You guys are hilarious and fun to listen to. It's just a super enjoyable listen, I feel like.
we love to have fun. That's for sure.
And I mean, think how lame that podcast would be if it was just Matt and Bubba.
Oh my
I
God.
completely
Well, that's
agree.
basically Matt and Bubba in the morning on the Twitch thing. Look how lame that is.
No,
Yikes.
nothing like a good
Totally
roast.
kidding.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend my entire time on this podcast roasting them.
Look, I'm here
That's
for
why.
that.
That's why you're here.
I'm
That's
here
the
for
true
that.
purpose.
I would totally concur with that, Drew. Like Kate, I put Kate and April in this category that I think the other four of us, you know, me, Drew, Matt, and Bubba, aren't in that they're very consistent, planning, like thoughtful people, where the other four of us are kind of just like fly by the seat of our pants and hope everything works out kind of people. And it makes a
That's
really
true.
good balance when we listen to them. But that's
Well, I'm
that's
glad you
Absolutely.
enjoy working with me. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and
it's been an honor, sir.
guess I'll leave.
All right.
I'll leave now.
You know,
See you later.
we don't like. I guess we had April Lynn on a while back, but this is only the second time we've had a founder on. Well, you and I
did.
interviewed each other. Yeah, priorities, I guess. but we don't have. That's not a normal episode. Is for us to have someone from our own organization on. But we wanted to do this because we feel like it's a good way to sort of introduce people to the people that make LTN go and make it tick and make it work. And so, yeah, I'd just be curious to hear from you just sort of about your experience with our organization. We're like 3-ish years old now as an organization. What do you love about Love Thy Nerd? Why do you keep doing this? Because it's like, you know, you don't get paid
Not
a
for
lot.
the paycheck, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. None of us get paid very much at all.
Oh.
And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So why do you do this?
I think, well, one thing that's like meaningful to just me personally with it is that viewing, I mean, I'm predominantly a video game nerd. I'm not super into tabletop stuff, but having not just me, but other people kind of like see the value in games and what can be taken away from that, what could be like learned, what could be observed and kind of applied to like a bigger picture of like, okay, what does this mean? Like a lot of people are like, there's no value in games. You just sit there in front of the TV and that's that. And everyone wants you to like get off the couch and get a job. It's like that's not it at all. And I think that one thing that we do really well is to try to help people who maybe aren't in that like circle of gamer nerds to understand the stuff that goes on and why these games are so important and valuable to the people that play them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's cool that that's still something that motivates you, because that's kind of what like connected you to Game Church in the first place. So it's still like a driving, motivating thing for you.
Yeah, it really is.
What do you hate about working with Subliner?
There's a couple people on staff that
there's two things that come to mind.
Yeah, there's
one's named Matt and one's named Bubba.
No, well, I guess what I hate, well, I don't really hate it, but I spend a lot more money on games because I need to be like playing games to like talk about them for the podcast and like all this stuff. So like my husband came into my office maybe a couple weeks ago and looked at all my PlayStation games lined up because I'm like, oh, look, it's like my little collection. And he goes, you have a lot of these. I was like, oh no.
And that's when he went out and bought the fancy new bike of his.
Yes, he bought a new bike to make up for all of the games. No way. The bike was way more expensive than all my games.
I was going to say, yeah, that doesn't seem like a fair trade.
And really, I don't have that many, but he's not used to seeing games.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a gamer
and he's not
at
really a game, right? Yeah.
Not at all.
I was going to say.
Not at all. So it's kind of where he kind of doesn't really understand 100%. Like he wouldn't say that. Like my grandpa had this story that he would tell all of us grandkids that if you played video games and sat in front of the TV, you would grow a third eye in the middle of your forehead and it couldn't be taken away. So
and get what taken away?
You couldn't get the eye removed. Like there was nothing you could do to get it removed once it grew. So you have to not watch TV and play games.
Wow.
So
that's actually true.
Thanks, Grandpappy.
Yeah, it's a nice little look into my family.
So
he still says it to this day. It's like, okay, it's not going to happen. We know it's not real now.
Yeah. You proved otherwise.
You're like, I've proved that theory.
Yeah.
Wrong.
It's wrong. It's wrong. Just look at all my games.
What are you playing right now? Like, what are you into right now?
Well, right this second, I'm playing Immortals Phoenix Rising because you suggested it to me and it looked fun.
And you listen to everything I say? I
listened to this particular thing that you said, but I'm a single player RPG deep narrative gamer.
Yeah. You guys can't see, but we're looking at video right now as we're recording this, and behind Kate is is it 5 panels? Like five panels. Like this sunset picture with characters from Red Dead Redemption 2.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is cool.
Like mosaic painting kind of thing.
It was a Christmas present.
Yeah.
Last Christmas.
So a big fan of Red Dead.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite game of all time.
Why?
Red Dead 2?
Yes.
Or Red Dead 1?
Red Dead 2. I did play Red Dead 1, and it's a really good game. But Red Dead 2 will always have a place in my heart just because the storytelling is masterful. It's a beautiful, realistic world where it really encourages kind of the creative and wandering soul by just giving you this whole world. And it's like, go explore all this beautiful stuff. See what happens when you look around. You might find a serial killer. You might find all this random stuff that happens in the world. But you won't ever find it if you don't go out and look and find stuff. You won't ever see this house that has been blown apart by an asteroid and it's currently sitting on top of 3 people. You would never find that if you didn't go and look. And I just love this story. I'm a fan of stories that have a lot of melancholy in them. So even though it destroys my heart and soul to experience it, I'm like, ooh, that was good. I am dead inside now, but that was good. That was a really good story.
Inside. You're Red
I'm
Dead
Red Dead inside. That's good. That's
You also accidentally commit a lot of, purposely, I guess, too, but accidentally, I did anyway, accidentally committed a lot of crimes in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, that...
In fact, I think we ran an article at Love Thy Nerd that was like crimes we accidentally committed.
And they're so true. It's like that's the universal experience with Red Dead 2. Is some people, had issues with the way the story ended in XYZ, but you've probably all punched your horses on accident at least once.
There was some button that was very close to another button that was like draw your weapon versus like pat your horse or something. And you'd be trying to like calm your horse down and accidentally you pull your weapon in the middle of the and shoot at somebody
in the
and then
middle
all of a sudden
town, and you're like, I was just trying to brush and feed my horse. Everyone please calm down.
And you murder a lot of horses. Well, I shouldn't say murder, but it just kind of happens like you'll be like sprinting away out of town and you accidentally run your horse into a boulder or something.
Yeah, or over a cliff that you didn't see.
Yeah.
I get so bummed.
With Immortals, you can just sprint those animals off the cliff and jump and fly.
It really was a weight removed when the game that I played after Red Dead, whichever it was, where you didn't really have to worry about the horse so much. It was just kind of there. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I loved. I'm like, this horse is great and nothing's going to happen to it. It's impossible for me to accidentally hurt it.
Yeah, I didn't have to name it or anything.
Yeah, they already came with a name.
What up, nerd? Thank you for listening to this podcast from the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network. We hope you're enjoying it. But hey, did you know that Love Thy Nerd airs almost all of its podcasts first on LTN Radio? That's right. LTN Radio is your home for the best Christian rock, rap, pop, and indie music. And it's also the place to go to hear Love Thy Nerd's content before it reaches the podcast feed. In addition to that, Love Thy Nerd creates a lot of content that's exclusive to LTN Radio that you're missing out on. So go check out ltnonair.com and listen for yourself. You can also download the Live 365 app on your smartphone and search and favorite LTN Radio, or enable the LTN Radio skill on your Echo devices and simply ask Alexa to play Love Thy Nerd. Now let's get you back to that podcast.
What got you into games, or when did you get into games?
I feel like I've been into games on and off since I was a kid, but I'd never really classified myself as a gamer until probably 2014 when I sat down and realized that I liked Assassin's Creed and I played all of them back to back. But as a kid, we had really strict screen time rules. Mm-hmm. Maybe like 45 minutes a day or something. I don't remember exactly, but it was looking now, I'm like 45 minutes. That's not enough time to get anything done. Are you kidding me? But it was kind of like that whole thing. So we played more like short game stuff that, wasn't super.
This was because of your grandpa's influence.
Well,
I was worried about that third eye.
Yeah, the TV eye, he called it. I think that was his response to us playing. There was this browser game called Yoda Stories that my brother and I were super into. It's really lame. Don't look it up. It has really bad ratings. But that we were into RuneScape and Neopets stuff that you could like work on when you could for whatever amount of time. Trying to get a level 99 wood chopping skill in RuneScape. Waste of time. Nothing really benefits from that.
Yoda Stories looks amazing. I just looked it up.
Well, you'll have to try it out, and I can guarantee you won't get TV eye from it. Look at me now.
Oh yeah,
look at you now.
Yeah, and my grandma, not the grandma married to this grandpa with the TV eye, grandma on the other side, bought us grandkids a PlayStation 1 so that we would hang out in her house more. But the thing is,
she kept it at her house?
She kept it at her house.
Wow.
And she put it in the room placement was very particular because she put it in this room that she knew we were afraid of. So if we wanted to play Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon,
big brain grandparents over
we would
there.
have to go in that scary haunted room.
Like that furnace in Home Alone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Was PlayStation the first console you had, or did you have something before that?
That was the first console. My brother and I had Game Boys that we had to save up and buy with our own money because our parents were like, if you want something like that, you're using your own monies. We were like, no, all the other kids at school, their parents pay for it, even though we don't know that.
Yeah.
So we had Game Boys, Game Boy Advances. I've always had, since then, I've tried to always have like one console and one handheld device.
That's funny.
So like right now I have
That's
the
funny that
PS4 and the Switch.
your grandma like supplied your first console essentially.
Yeah.
Because like when growing up, I think we had like a computer when I was a kid, but it was like, you know, a massive like computer that couldn't do much.
Yeah.
But my mom bought a Nintendo, an NES, under the idea that she and my dad would play it. Like she bought it for her. Like she thought this would be fun for me and my dad. And then they played like Mario 3 or 4 times, and my brother and I basically took it over. It was like became our Nintendo, you know? Yeah. So
yeah,
and she's still like, when I play games with my mom, she'll be like, "Can we play the original Mario?" Every once in a while, she'll ask me if we can play Mario together.
Cute.
Yeah,
precious.
What a good mom.
Yeah.
And the first time, because that PlayStation 1 lived at my grandma's, and my brother and I were like, we want a console at home. And we went through this phase where we were super into Dance Dance Revolution. We would go to the bowling alley and play Dance Dance Revolution at the bowling alley. So my parents bought a PlayStation 2 and Dance Dance Revolution and the mats and stuff because it was like healthy. Yeah, it was healthy, so we could play at home.
Yeah.
What they didn't know is if you unplug the mat and plug a handheld normal controller in, you can just press the buttons to do it.
It's probably like way easier.
It is.
too.
It's really fun because you can play on like ultra hard and stuff where it's physically almost impossible to do it.
And there's like all these indie designers and developers and stuff that have figured out ways to program those pads to play other games on them and stuff. Like somebody has like beaten Dark Souls, I think, using the dance.
That is so amazing. Like I would love
Revolution
to
pad.
see that. Just
They've done it with the Donkey Kong drums.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
people are
wild.
nuts.
yeah, seriously.
Dude, leave it to gamers to find a way out of exercising.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you share about like having pretty strict limits on how much you could play games, because like I think about that now with my kids. We definitely try to like limit the amount of time they play games. But I remember growing up, like my parents hardly ever told me, "Hey,
Parents
you
never even
can't."
talked to me, so let alone.
Like I know there were times when they were annoyed with the amount of time I played video games and stuff. But there were definitely like weekends where I just played video games like the entire weekend.
And look at you, man. You turned out just fine.
Yeah, you don't have a
turned out
TVI
okay.
either. You're just
great.
I
fine.
don't have a third eye. But it is weird how that's changed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but not for you. It was always restricted for you.
It's always been restricted.
Was that like also like a religious thing? Did you grow up in the church?
I did, but I think the game, well, now that you mention it, maybe it's all tied together.
Oh.
Maybe because, so I grew up in the church. My parents, grandparents, everybody, that's just what we did, was go to church on Sunday. As my brother and I got older, and we're like, we don't want to. My mom's like, as long as you live under this house, Sundays we go to church. And we were like, no, but would go, and sit there like, really mad. But yeah,
I always tried to sleep when I was a kid.
Just try to sleep.
When my parents would make me go to church, and I would like lay my head on the pew in front of me and try to sleep, and then like you'd start nodding off, and I'd hit my head on the
on the edge,
like the hymnal rack, those underneath
yeah,
and my mom would get mad.
Yeah, and I think that did play into like the strictness of everything. I remember being in 5th grade, and the first Harry Potter movie was out on VHS, and we were going to watch it as a class in 5th grade, and my mom said no, and I was the only one that had the permission slip and said no, and I was like,
get
why?
your permission slip.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, why would you do this? She's like, because
you're like Harry Potter,
yeah,
who couldn't get the Dursleys to sign his slip to go to Hogsmeade.
Yeah, and
wow, Drew, that was that's some deep cuts there, my man.
It was. I was so mad, and
I've
then
got those books memorized, basically.
My mom realized that I was the only one. She's like, well, there's witchcraft. I'm like, it's not real. Like having that whole like conversation. So she finally caved and let me see it, and I loved it because I'd been reading the books in school. She didn't,
secretly.
Yeah, she didn't want the books at home. And I was like, I've read all the books. They're fine. Trust me. So
Wow.
just an interesting, and I've talked to my mom about stuff like that and about video games and her thoughts on things now. And she's like, we didn't know at the time. People were at church and stuff and just in life were saying that's bad. That's like not Christian, don't let your kids around Harry Potter because it's witchcraft. So we did what we thought was best based off the information we had. Now I probably wouldn't do that because I know differently. But at the time, the context.
I do think like that's really helpful to hear from her through you. I think we could, I'm actually saying this to myself as much as I'm saying to anybody listening, like cut our parents some slack when it comes to that stuff, because like they didn't have the information access that we have now. Like we can go Google whatever we want and find infinite amounts of information on that thing from infinite points of view. But yeah, back then it was like what Sally at church said about this thing. It was like they were doing their best with what they had. I mean, think about my own parents, like, and how they, how strict they were about that stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of that just comes out of ignorance, not in a mean way, but just they didn't know, and it was such a new
there was no other
phenomena.
Sources to read about it. There was that was it. And it was the same thing with Dungeons and Dragons. My uncle used to love playing Dungeons and Dragons, and everyone was like, "Oh, like your uncle, he's playing Dungeons and Dragons."
Yeah.
It's like when I saw him, he was just sitting there eating Cheetos. What do you mean?
Ashley always tells the story of the first time she saw me play D&D when we first got married. And she's like, it looked so boring. It just looked like a meeting. Like they were just in a meeting with like pencils and paper. And she's like, it looked awful. Like just so boring. I'm like, you're not wrong. Like it is kind of just a business meeting.
You guys get together and for fun, you write stuff on paper and
sit around
and do math.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And my mom, she's a therapist in the Colorado Springs area. And she's told me that there is such a need for kids who just want to be understood with their nerdy passions. Like that's all they want, is to not be like, Harry Potter, are you kidding me? It's like nobody, like they just want to be loved and encouraged in their nerdiness. It's like, you like Fortnite? Cool. What do you like about it? Like all this stuff. And my mom's like, not every client, but a lot of the clients that come in, that's all they want. And it's so sad. And my mom's like, I don't know how to talk video games with the kids. Like, I don't really know what to say to that, but it is a huge, huge need.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think like, it's really easy to, I don't know, just to get antagonistic with your kids about stuff like this because there are reasons to be like concerned. Like I look back on it and I'm like, I can't believe my parents, but it was the same thing. It was the same thing. Like they didn't know that it's probably not a good idea to let your kid play games for, 7 hours in one sitting or something. And so like for me and my wife now, my wife especially probably reads way too much about about child development and things. Like we know way more than we need to, honestly. But we really need, I think there's those old habits though, misinformation that we have and an overabundance of information about this kind of stuff, I think still paralyzes people. So even though we know more now, I think we're in this weird place now where we have all this information, but we still don't really know how to make sense of it.
It puts people in that position where it's like, okay, now there's a lot of information here, different sides. What is valid? And like, how do I tell what is a good source? How do I tell how to kind of integrate that into life?
Yep. Which is like, I think a testimony to, or speaks to why Love Thy Nerd is important. Not that we have the answers to all those questions, but I think we try to take a posture of like, hey, we'll help you think through that.
Definitely.
And we'll try to get you the best information. We'll try to be balanced. People need guides today because because of our overabundance of information, and we need people who can guide us and say like, hey, I'm going to help you try to make responsible choices and help you think about your neighbor and help you, engage these things in a way that's healthy.
Yeah.
and life-giving and whatever else.
Hey everyone, I'm Radio Matt from the Back Row Morning Show, and I've got your 5 random facts. Cruise ships have morgues that can store up to 10 bodies at once. The average amount of people that die on cruise ships per year is 200. Sorry, Mo. Small as they may be, ladybugs have a unique smell that humans are incredibly sensitive to. During World War II, a U.S. naval destroyer won a battle against a Japanese submarine by throwing potatoes at them. The Japanese thought they were grenades. A man with severe OCD and a phobia of germs attempted to commit suicide with a gun to his head. Instead of killing him, the bullet eliminated his mental illness without any other damage. And lastly, vanilla flavoring is sometimes made with the urine of beavers. For more facts and other hilarious nonsense, join me and Mo for the Back Row Morning Show at 7 a.m. and again at 9 a.m. Eastern every Monday through Thursday, right here on LTN Radio.
So, growing up in church, what was that like? I mean, you kind of mentioned a little bit of like you just didn't want to go or it was boring or whatever. Like, was there a point where that changed? What was that like? Like, talk about that.
I remember I was a really good Sunday school student up until maybe 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up switching churches from the church that I'd grown up in to one in a different city because we moved.
And are these like non-denominational churches?
Yeah.
Okay.
Non-denominational.
Non-denom?
Christian. Yep, the non-denom. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of fit in, I guess, sort of. Well, the driving force for my brother and I to participate in this middle school youth group and like late elementary school youth group was that they had Xboxes with Halo, and then they got a set of 3
I'm seeing
Game
like a
Cubes.
recurring theme here is that you have to be bribed with a console to go somewhere.
Basically. And then they even had DDR, and my brother would play DDR, and I'd play DDR and would be all sweaty, like sitting through the sermon. And so like that was cool. And then it was around that time that I started getting into music, where I'd been into music before. Like I started getting involved when I was like 6 or something with piano, and then later violin and mandolin.
Mm-hmm.
But around that time I was starting to get into guitar, and I'm like, there's a youth group band here. I should try to play with them. Then I can learn a bunch of stuff. So I started playing with them, and it was fine. And then I started playing drums. I'm like, I guess I could play drums here. Started doing that. And then it all went downhill like really bad to where like it still annoys me to this day, even though it happened so long ago. But so they would, I guess it was on purpose, low key like bullying me, like telling me to show up at places to do worship stuff, and then I'd show up and they'd be like, "You're not playing, get out of here," like that kind of.
Ooh.
They like the adults,
the worship leaders, which I put in quotes because they were probably high school students. So there was no adult supervision of any of this, really. Just my mom would come to drop me off, and I'd call her 10 minutes later, and I'd be really sad, like all this. And it was really not cool, like.
And this was high school or before
this
that?
was middle school for me.
Wow, okay.
So probably mid to late, probably 8th grade for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was so sad, like, because I felt like I'd finally found some kind of way that I fit into church besides the consoles. Something else with the music where it was like a meaningful kind of way to engage. And then these people who I thought were supposed to be nice because they're church people were being jerks to me. And it was like, I get bullied enough at school. I don't come here to get bullied. Are you kidding me? So my mom and my grandparents went and talked to the lead pastor and were like, hey, we have some concerns about stuff with the youth group, that kind of conversation. And he's like, well, I don't, have anything to do with that. Whatever, like some super lame response where it's like, hello, you're in charge of this stuff, are you not? Like, what? And so my mom told me, you have this choice. You can either keep playing with these guys or you can stop. It's your choice. It's up to you, and I decided I wasn't going to play with them because it was really not cool. And I laid in my bed and cried for like 4 days on and off, just super sad. And I'm like, I'm never going to get to play the drums or get to play music again. These guys.
But you showed them wrong.
Did you ever show them?
I showed them wrong, but if not, that was another thing that I tried to sabotage for myself as well. But So that happened. And then there's this recurring theme, especially looking back, where it's like, I might have not been super into church and been like about that, but there was undeniably a recurring theme of God doing stuff for me and giving me stuff, basically, that at the time I was kind of like, oh, whatever. But now looking back, it's really profound, at least to me. And so after that church experience, I'm like, I don't even want to go to this church anymore. These people are whack. Like, I had a bad taste about church people because of the whole bullying in church thing. So I was really offended about it. Then a couple months later, my mom found this thing in the newspaper that said there was a program for kids who want to play music. And she asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said sure. So I did it. Met some really cool people. That closed down. Another one opened. That was basically, or no, not basically. It was a school of rock, like a real school of rock. So
was Jack Black there?
He wasn't there. I never saw him there.
It's disappointing.
I would have loved to have seen him there. And while I was at this school, that stuff went by really fast. So I'd been playing drums for maybe a year, and these random guys came, and my friend who was the music director was like, all right, you guys, you got to play a couple songs for these guys. I'm like, who are these guys? They're dressed like they go to a prep school. I don't know. It was an odd thing to see there. So we played a bunch of music for them. And then they said, oh, we're scouts from Disney and we're here to find girl musicians. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And kind of just left. Because I didn't want anything to do with it.
And you were like 15, 16 at this time?
I was 15.
But that didn't so you just thought that was, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
You didn't, that wasn't like, oh, this is going to be my break or something.
No,
I guess you weren't really thinking in that way, huh?
No. And this is another thing and at this time I was super shy. I was not like I am now. Really shy, soft-spoken, kind of like, oh, kind of like Eeyore.
Yeah.
So this stuff, and they're like, oh, gave me some paperwork and emailed my mom or something saying, here's the audition information. I'm like, that's a bunch of, I'm not going to do that. It's dumb. It was a collaboration with Walt Disney Records and the Go-Go's to make like a new version of the Go-Go's for a Disney audience. I'm like, I don't like the Go-Go's. It's kind of like that about it. The email said, dress like really cute and 80s, whatever. And I didn't do that. I went to the audition. There was a bunch of songs we had to learn. Some were Go-Go, some were like other covers of like female rock artists. And I really put up a fight against learning the songs. It's like, why? I don't know. I don't have the answers as to why.
You tried really hard not to get this gig.
Yeah, I did.
In other words.
I showed up.
Which, if anyone's listening that didn't get the gig and just mad that Kate got it, sorry. She didn't actually want it.
I really didn't want it. I just didn't want. I mean, I did learn the songs to perfection in the end because I'm like, well, I can't. That's a little too low for me to just show up not even knowing the songs.
Yeah, you were a very typically a pretty prepared, organized person.
Yes,
so,
but I'm very resistant to change. So I'm like, well, I don't want.
Yeah.
I showed up, I played the songs, and then one of the guys that was there at the audition came out and was like talking to me while we were still in like the audition room, and a couple of members of the Go-Go's were there, and he got his guitar out, and I was like, sweet, this is so much fun, and we were like playing, and then I went out of the room. My mom asked how it went, and I was like, oh no. I had fun, like. And there was another audition after that to kind of weed people out. Again, I did not dress in the wardrobe they wanted because I'm like, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that. There's a video of me in the audition playing the drums. I'm frowning. I'm actively frowning. It's really.
I'm not enjoying this. I'm mad.
So then they said, oh, okay, you girls are it. Like, you got the gig. And I went out in the hallway and was like, oh, this is the worst day of my life. Like,
oh my God.
There was a lot of drama about it. I'm like, I don't.
That was the day you became a Disney princess.
That was the day. But it was the shove that I needed to start becoming more like a human being instead of an Eeyore depressed, quiet person. I mean, not that it's bad. It's not bad to be quiet. It's not bad to be depressed, but it was like I was just stagnant sitting there.
It just kind of brought you out of your shell.
It did. It forced me to. Then,
So you ended up being a part of this Disney band. Tell us what it was called again.
it was called KSM. The end evolution of it was called KSM. If you look it up, you will see pictures of a terrorist. If you keep scrolling, you might see pictures of me. So if you're going to Google it, just put KSM band, just to be safe.
Yeah.
KSM band.
KSM band. And
what did the KSM stand for?
I don't know. They said...
You never found that out?
No, they said your band name's going to be KSM, turn it into a text acronym. Because we couldn't decide on a name, so they said that. And...
Okay.
Yeah, I did the craziest stuff in this. Like, looking at me now and looking at me before, you'd be like, there is no way that you would ever do that or could ever do that. But I did it, and it was hugely beneficial to me.
Yeah.
And the coolest part was I had really solid people that I found that were around me, some of them Christians, some of them not, but either way, just good influences, solid people who were like, hey, that behavior that you see right there is not good. Don't ever do that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Stuff like
so you like toured and the whole thing,
Yes.
like played on Good Morning America. Like this was a big thing.
It was a big deal, much bigger than the church youth group. So it was kind of a thing to me. It's like, see, look, you can play drums again. You will play drums again, just because the youth group, that.
Did you ever go back to the? Did you ever go back to the youth group band and be like, hey, do you guys need a drummer?
like
and then they're
Pretty
like,
Woman.
yeah, totally. And then you're like, oh, actually, sorry, I got
It's like
this
the
gig
Pretty
at
Woman
Good Morning
thing where
America.
they won't let her shop at that store and then she comes back.
Yeah, there was
But like
this,
the church youth group drum version.
we did this show. We were on tour with Demi Lovato, and we did this show in Arizona. And two people who had been at the leaders of the youth group at that time were there, and they messaged me and asked if they could come to the show to see me play.
Wow.
I'm like, this is really weird. It's like, do I want you?
And you're like, sorry, I don't have any extra tickets.
It's all sold out. I went back and forth with it because it's like, do I want to be petty and just ignore it, or like that doesn't seem right? So they came and watched it.
Look at you being
And
the
it was
bigger
in
person.
it was in an arena. So it was a big show. And then after all those shows, we would do meet and greets that would be 2 or 3 hours long. So they waited 2 or 3 hours after the show until we finished with everybody, and then came up to talk to me. And I'm like, this is super weird.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
You
wild.
guys let me get bullied, but at the same time, welcome.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
made me
What,
think
what was
a lot
the-
about that.
What was the biggest show you played? Do you remember? How many people?
Yes, because
Because you
it
opened
was,
for Jonas too,
it
right?
was a sold out. It was a Jonas Brothers show. That was the biggest one we ever played. It was at this venue that Matt Warmbier likes, but it got ripped down, called the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. And that thing holds like 19,000 people, and then they were packed. It was sold out.
Yeah.
That was one of the weirdest, wildest experiences ever. Because you can't
Like that.
see anyone or hear. All you hear is just like,
Yeah.
you can't see or hear anyone. So that was pretty wild. We did some shows with them. They were our management, or their management team was our management team. And yeah, it's just
So
weird.
you like bumped elbows with like some super famous people, like the Jonas Brothers are massive. Demi Lovato, like pretty big deal. Like, was that I don't know, what was that like? But because it seems like, I don't know, you strike me as someone who's pretty down to earth and is just not like fazed by that whole world. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but like I just feel like if I was in that situation, I'd be like, oh, it would like consume me, and I would want to become.
I've actually seen
like-
Drew in that situation on this podcast with certain guests that we have. I've seen how he acts. So
I'd want to like figure out some way to become Jordan Jonas or
I'm so
something,
excited.
Drew
Jonas. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't really faze me. I don't really get starstruck, or because at the end of the day, they are just another human. I'm like, and I see them as that. not that the things that they've done aren't like killer and awesome, because they are, but at the end of the day, they're just another person like me. I see them eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I'm in there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I know their whole crew and their whole like team, just another person, just another human, which it's so wild to then be like, okay, this is just an ordinary human who has like a talent, or sometimes no talent these days. And you just put them on a stage in front of people, and it's this weird transformative experience. It's hardcore. It's really hard. And I have pity's not the word, empathy, sympathy for everyone in that industry, because it is hard to get through it. Like knowing
without losing some of your
who you are, what you are, it is so hard. That's why it's like I felt fortunate to have people around me who would be honest with me, not just say yes, and would point out stuff like, hey, you did this, it was really jacked up. Like, you need to go apologize to so and so. I'm like, didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I can't remember what I was listening to. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about child stars, like so many of them struggle. And I think it's easy for us from the outside looking in going like, oh gosh, come on. If I had that much fame and money, like I would not.
Like, it'd be so easy.
I would not do. Yeah, I would use it well. But the reality is, it's like just young people, like your brain's not even fully formed until you're like 24 or 25, I think.
Yeah. So I was 15 when I started. When we were touring at our most heaviest, I was like 17 and 18. There were a couple people in my band who were younger. So when I was 15, they were 13 and 14. So I can't.
Did you see some of that? Like some of this going to their heads and sort of like jacking with who they were?
What I saw the most was just the struggle to be like, who am I in this environment? Like, who I'm 14 years old or 15 years old. We're doing all this stuff. What does that mean for my life? Just a lot of uncertainty mostly, and that teenage struggle to like find out who you are on steroids, and then having to amplify that for the camera and stuff.
The thing really hard to do. It's what grosses me out about that is Disney doesn't care. Like the executives, their bottom line is the dollar, the money, and so for them coming in there. I think of these two guys you mentioned. I don't know them personally, but the ones that came into like for the auditions or whatever. Yeah. Like they're not coming in there thinking about any of that stuff. Like, oh, who are they as people? How can we mentor them and, help them become these, wonderful people of contributing members of society? Like they're just, how can we make money? Yeah. And everything else be damned, like you think about, I don't know, somebody like Shia LaBeouf or these people that have just spiraled out because that's the first person that comes to mind. Because like, I actually really like him.
He was great in Peanut Butter Falcon.
Dude, I love him. I think he's awesome. But the dude, I mean, he can't stay out of the headlines because of just his life spiraling.
Really hard.
And it's because, I mean, I'm so glad to hear and to know you, Kate, but to hear like you had people, thank God, around you that did have your best interest at heart, not their best interest or Disney's best interest. You know?
And most of my other bandmates had a parent with them because of their age. And technically I was underage, but both my parents were working full time. So they're not going to, quit. My dad's not going to stop being a dentist so he can come on the road with me for 3 months. That's not how, it's going to go down. So they would.
But a lot of parents do.
Yes.
Of child stars,
very
and
common,
like
very common.
Live vicariously through them.
Very common. And so one of the other girls' moms was technically my like guardian. But and it was two guys in particular that really stepped up and were like, if you were my kid, I would not like let you be in this position or whatever. And it was not their job. It was not their responsibility at all. Like these are two guys who are roadies who were investing in my life and my well-being and saying, you know what? let them do that. How about we go get pizza? And I was like, yay, pizza. But it's so important to have that. And not everybody not everybody has those people around them. Not everybody can find those people. So I look back at that and was like, that's what helped me be sane in a situation where it was like, this is a business. You girls are a business.
Yeah.
Your band is a business and all of you are entrepreneurs. So let's get to work.
Yeah, for sure.
Saying that to 15, 16, and 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
So when did you
Dude.
bow out of that world, or how did you transition out of that into like the real world?
It was a really,
Not that that's not the real world, but you know what I
you're
mean.
right. It's not. It's a total other thing, and that's why right now in the pandemic, all these guys who work on the road are struggling to do normal jobs because it's so different. I know a friend who just can't get a normal job and keep it down because it's not what they're used to at all.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I live in Nashville, so a big music city, and like our city's really hurting because of COVID, obviously, because there's so many entertainers and musicians and songwriters that live here.
Yeah. But I was getting bored with it because there's a saying called hurry up and wait. So that was a lot of what our project was, like, hurry, wait, work your butts off for 2 years in a row, nonstop, wait, hurry up, wait. I'm like, oh gosh, I just want to like go to college and learn about something else. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
I applied to a university and I got in and was like, bye, I'm going to go do this now. And then I did it, and it was the roughest transition. It was really rough. Like, just going home every day and not having to just wake up and then leave and then come back, or being gone for long periods of time. It's just like staying in one place. I felt like I was going insane. So I just worked really hard at school to like try to distract myself from that feeling of I shouldn't be just sitting here. I should be going and doing something.
Yeah.
Even though going to school is something, but it was just not what I was used to. And I hadn't played drums for a while at that point. Some time had passed, and I don't remember what else. We had been doing some other stuff that wasn't actually like a show, so I wasn't playing. And I got a call from somebody from another church here who I'd kind of heard of from another place. All good things, nothing bad. And he was like, do you want to play drums at this church? I was like, sure. And then I hung up the phone and immediately regretted it. Just like, how could I be so dumb to get myself in that situation again? It's the same thing again. What?
So had you not played for church since
I hadn't played
the
for
middle
church
school thing?
Since the middle school thing.
And you're like what age now at this point? Like 24 or 23?
Probably 19 or 20.
Oh, okay.
19 or 20. And I was a hot mess. Just like, just like there was a lot of stuff going on. Just in my head, stuff like the whole adjustment, then going back to church, sort of. These people were like, come play. I played and I had a great time that first time. And also who played that first day that I played was Steven, who is now my husband. That's how we met.
Got him.
Yeah, got him. And
what does he play?
He plays the bass.
Nice.
I still have dreams of forming a band with Kate and Steven someday. I just want to play.
Actually, might be fun. Then we could play games after.
Yeah. We'll just do some like lo-fi video.
You can call it KYR.
Yeah, KYR.
You just don't tell anyone what it stands for.
Okay.
So that was. I was super against it. It's like I wanted to play music at this place with this fun person who was like a killer music director, has a lot of the same music experience as me. And honestly, it was another example of like God put the right person there. The only person who could get through to me was this individual who had the same music experience, could talk to me on that level, but could also talk to me on like a spiritual level, who had a gift of helping people like long term come to terms with the fact that like Jesus loves them.
And that was Steven that did that for you.
Not Steven.
oh, sorry. I thought that you were talking about.
Steven's
like,
just
wow.
eye candy.
Steven at that time was also having a rough time in life. But so this person kind of did that for both of us.
And this
Oh,
was
nice.
he was the worship director, or like the creative
Yes.
director there or something.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I would roast him every Sunday. It was the best. But like that's what I needed at that time, was someone to
Mm.
understand what I'd been through, say, here's how that fits in the context of worship music here.
Mhm.
Here's how Christianity really is, as someone who lives it out. Like, this person would never bully me in that way. Never.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
he would make fun of me, but never bully me. So he kind of
Yeah.
set an example for, like, all of us were like younger people in the band, set an example for how that's really supposed to be, like for real supposed to be. And we were like, wow, that's kind of weird. Never seen that before, which is sad. But yeah, and I played at that church for 7 years.
Mhm.
And after I said I would never go back, and also that it was the worst idea in the world.
So that's kind of what got you back into church and sort of
Yeah.
on this faith journey.
And then that's what made me look up religion and video games in the podcast. Because I wouldn't
Yeah.
have, without like this person and this transformative church experience that helped me kind of pull it together a little, I wouldn't have been able to do Game Church. I wouldn't have been able to do Love Thy Nerd for sure.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That speaks to, like, I don't know, just the power of relationships, I think, because we have this tendency, I think, to assume that people leave the faith or step into it because they had this, like, and I think there's some truth to it. We all have to come to terms with what we believe on some level, or else we're just not going to be like true to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're just going to sort of like, and there's a lot of people that do that too, like that are hypocrites. I mean, this whole story about Ravi Zacharias came out recently, which illustrates that, I think. His famous apologist who was, had abused a lot of people. But yeah, like, I think we assume that a lot of people come to faith just because they wrestled with it, or they leave the faith because they like started reading a book by an atheist or something. But the reality is it's usually tied to relationships.
Yeah.
Like, somebody really came alongside you and like actually, lived like Jesus in a way that was really compelling.
Pushed me to address the uncomfortable stuff. It was very similar to the relationships that I had when I was on tour. It's that same thing of trying to find those people who will be real with you.
Yeah.
Answer your questions, challenge you, be like, hey, you shouldn't do that because XYZ, and let you ask all the questions that you want. My whole family thought I was a goner when I went on tour and got involved in all this music stuff. They're like, she doesn't have TV eye, but she's going into a faithless place. She's going to turn into whatever. My dad gave me a Bible before I left and was like, keep this in your suitcase. A nice gesture. But at the time, I'm like, get this out of here. Come on. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Get that Bible out of my face.
Yeah.
Like that relative that thinks if you just watch whatever documentary that they just watched, that it would totally change your life.
Oh yeah.
Or if they give you, instead of telling you what they really think, they just give you a book.
Look,
or whatever. Like,
I watched Super Size Me and I still love McDonald's. Okay. Doesn't
Did you hear they're
matter.
bringing back Orange High C? Because I'm excited.
Ooh.
You don't like it?
But yeah, I think a lot of times, somebody hands you a book, especially a family member, and it feels like the book is actually titled, "Here's what I think is wrong with you."
It's a list.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what else I forgot to mention? Disney gave me a DS Lite.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Nice.
They were like, here, girls, everyone can have a DS Lite, and you get to pick a game. And I looked at all the games. I'm like, these are all trash. But I didn't say anything because, they don't know.
How long were you in KSM?
Ooh, 4 years? 4.5.
So 4 years of your life, and all you got was a DS.
I still
Lite.
have it.
You still get getting any royalty checks?
No, I've never gotten a royalty check once.
No.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Signed a bum deal.
No, we're so in debt. We're not going to see nothing for ages and ages.
I'm gonna just put KSM on repeat on Spotify for you.
I mean, you kind of got into this a little bit, but I've never gotten to pick your brain about your KSM days, and I find it fascinating. But like you stepped away from that. It seemed like it got boring for you in a way. It wasn't fulfilling for you.
No.
But do you ever because I feel like so many people would have a really hard time stepping away from that world. Do you ever like kick yourself, or are you pretty happy with the decision you made?
I'm happy that I made that decision to walk away from that particular project, but every year in the fall time, I get bummed thinking, oh, I want to get back in music and go on tour again because that was so much fun. And like that was the fulfilling part for me, was getting to play music every night, go to different places, have a cool experience. That kind of stuff. For me, it was about the music and performing and executing the music and the show to the best of my ability.
It's hard because you're talking about like the music, and that part of it. It seems like, at least at the level you guys were performing at, it's hard to have that stuff without all the other crap.
It
like
is.
You have to do all the other crap to execute at that level.
It is impossible. So it's like, you have to do press stuff. You have to get up at 2:30 in the morning to do whatever press, to have all this drama, to have to deal with stuff between a label and the management and certain deals to get the money for the certain people. And I'm like, can we just rehearse for about 3 weeks straight and then leave?
Yeah.
That's what I like to do. I'll rehearse all day.
Yeah.
It's fun for me. I like it to be perfect as possible. And then you take it out and play it for people and see what they think of it.
Yeah.
See if they hate
All right,
it.
well, this fall, KYR is going on tour.
Yeah, yes.
Me, Kate, and Steven.
Let's do it.
Speaking
tuned.
of KYR, when did you and Steven get married?
2014.
Okay.
7 years.
So y'all basically started dating, I guess, through through playing together?
Yeah. Although I knew him for like 2 years before we ever dated or anything.
Okay. So this is kind of a deep question, but I like to ask our guests this. Like, how has that shaped you? How has being married shaped you as a person?
Ooh. I mean, I think about this all the time, but it really showed me how selfish I am.
It can do that for sure. Yeah. I've had that experience too.
I didn't think I was that bad, but after getting married,
I think I'm still learning that lesson, honestly. But
well, I've come to the understanding of, yes, I'm a selfish person, but I haven't really nailed the whole, okay, now stop doing that.
Same here.
I haven't nailed it. So that's going to be, I mean, we've almost been married 7 years. Yeesh. Guess you should work a little harder on it. But
we'll have Steven on the next episode.
Yeah,
we'll
have
ask him
Steven
how
on
you're
to
doing.
confirm or deny, but and it was
y'all have been married longer than hundreds of celebrity couples. So
that's true. You are like one of those the celebrity success stories.
Oh my gosh. Not even. Oh, jeez.
Was Steven, you mentioned he had a similar experience to you. Was he in like a big band or something?
No,
before?
not so much as that, but just kind of a similar experience in being a part
your faith journey
of, and really choosing to take that on for himself. Like, that's the time, that whole transition when I started playing at this new church, new to me church. And it was a challenge because I just wanted to play the drums and not really say that I went there or stick around for anything else.
Yeah.
And my friend, who was like a mentor to me, said, you have to, make that decision for yourself. And once you make it, then you have to live it. Because he was saying, like, your parents, said you grow up in a Christian household, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you have to decide to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, no.
That sounds hard.
That sounds really hard. The way my parents, the way I have it right now is nice, but...
Right.
Yeah. I can definitely identify with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting life experience. It just, looking back on my life, it's like, did I really do that stuff? I don't know. It doesn't really seem like something I do.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, there's internet proof. Just go Google it. There's lots of proof out there.
KSM ban. Make sure you put ban in there so you don't get the terrorist, you said?
Yeah. Yeah, look it up after this. Look it up just without the word band in it.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for all the stories, Kate.
Yeah, thanks.
That's
for
like stuff that I didn't even know.
listening to my rambling about music and TVI consoles at my grandma's haunted room.
I just really want to meet your grandma and grandpa.
Yeah. I'm a little worried about the third eye thing, though.
Well, just keep an eye out
to watch out for that. Yeah.
Because, like you said, once it starts, it can't be removed. So.
So how can people find you, Kate, if they want to follow all your escapades?
Ooh, you can find me on Twitter at Kate Dangerous. I'm probably the most active on Twitter with all kinds of things and gaming things and whatever I can
Shenanigans.
think of.
Just Kate Shenanigans.
Shenanigans. And Instagram, I'm at Kate Dangerous as well. That's pretty much it.
And technically, if you follow all the Love Thy Nerd stuff, you're following Kate.
Yes, you can do that.
That's true.
You can also find me on the Free Play Podcast every Friday on Twitch at 12 p.m. PST and 3 p.m. EST at twitch.tv/LoveThyNerd.
Love it.
Got that all
Great
out.
plug.
And
great plug.
And you and Steven go on some like really cool road trips to all kinds of places that I'm really jealous
the
of.
most beautiful dog that has ever lived.
I'm surprised you haven't asked about her. Her name is
my
Finn.
gosh.
She's Chris's little friend.
She is the love of my life. No offense, Ashley. But that animal is so precious to me. I'm gonna cry.
I feel similarly about Steven's bike.
Yeah. Well, I would say you could borrow
He
it.
has a really cool bike.
So
What'd you say?
I would say you could borrow it, but he took it away to go ride that terrible trail. So
right now, Steven is biking on a trail called Suicide something
awful.
or something.
Yeah, it's called the Suicide Trail. It's like, why would you say that?
No,
so,
thanks.
you can follow Steven on Strava at I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's great having you on,
Cool.
Kate. I learned a lot that I did not know about you, and it was really cool to hear your kind of faith journey in more detail. And definitely go check Kate out on all the socials and follow us on all the socials because that's basically Kate's hard work
Love that.
that goes in all those. So
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.